Nesse vídeo, Katie Clarke irá revelar as ferramentas que você precisa para sair do modo sobrevivência e criar uma nova realidade. Assista até o final e deixe seu comentário.
Manifesting a new reality, regulation and cultivating a sense of lethal calm is a secret weapon. It's a superpower. And it's a superpower because what manifestation truly is it's not about changing something in your reality. It's about changing yourself internally so that the natural byproduct of that is different results in your reality. So a lot of people, they look at the results in their lives and they stay in this feedback loop of feeding into whatever their bank account balance is, whatever their job situation is, whatever their relationship situation looks like, and they continue to define themselves from what they see in front of them or what has happened in the past. And that keeps their state, their identity, their beliefs, their thoughts, and their emotions stuck, resonating with the results of the past. Therefore, they can't even perceive of the actions that can get them different results. So a lot of people are trying to take actions from the same old state of consciousness, from the same old identity, and it keeps them in the same old reality. You could only take action within a particular state of consciousness. So at a certain point, if you want to change your results dramatically, you have to go beyond the physical and you have to go to the causal aspects, what comes before action, which is your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions. All of that is going to dictate your perspective and what you're focusing on. It's going to dictate the ideas that you can even perceive, the actions that you can even think to take, and it's going to change the type of actions that you take. When you change your thoughts, when you change your beliefs, when you change your emotions, that changes the actions that you take, okay? And then your results change when your actions change. So if you're continuing to take more and more and more action, you're getting busier and busier and busier, and it's not really changing your results too much, then you need to change the type of action that you are taking, which requires you to change internally so that your perspective and awareness can shift so that you can perceive of new actions that are actually aligned with your desired reality. That is why shifting to a new reality requires you to shift into the state of consciousness of the self that is there already first, because you are the cause and the physical outcome is simply the effect of your state of being. So you will not see a change in your results, in your finances, in your life, in your relationships, until you change your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, and then you can change your actions. Now that's all very well and good, but the question then is, why is it so hard to change our thoughts? Why is it so hard to change our beliefs? Why is it so hard to change our emotions and our identity? And one of the biggest reasons that people struggle with changing and shifting internally is because they are in an internal state of survival. They're in survival mode. So what I'm about to share with you today, we're going to talk about nervous system regulation. We're going to talk about becoming more calm and centered in your body. And you're going to want to click off this. You're going to think this is not important. It's not something that we usually perceive as important. But what I'm going to give you today is basically the tools to gain back control of your internal operating system, to gain back control of your thoughts, of your emotions, of your beliefs, of your self-concept, of your mind. And controlling your mind is controlling your reality, because everything is first created on the mental plane before it can be experienced by you physically. And so if you want to be able to control your reality, you need to be able to control your mind. You cannot control your mind whilst you are in a state of chronic dysregulation, whilst you are in survival mode. In that state, your mind is controlling you. And 70% or more of people are in a state of chronic dysregulation in their nervous system. It is normal nowadays to be in survival mode. But what survival mode does is it keeps your consciousness trapped in the past, and it keeps you in a negative state where you're constantly focusing on the bad, you're constantly focusing on threats, and your brain is also trying to conserve energy, so it's going to keep you trapped in the same old thought loops, and you simply won't have the energy or the space in your awareness to step outside of your old thoughts and choose differently. Meaning you won't be able to change the things internally that matter most, that are going to change your vibration, which is going to change your external reality. So I'm handing you in this video the controller. back to your internal state, back to being able to navigate and change the way that you think, the way that you perceive, the way that you feel. So I invite you to really take this seriously, because if you take the time to go through this kind of more boring, not so glamorous stuff and actually regulate and calm your nervous system, you are going to be able to master yourself, which means mastering your results in your reality. So I'm going to explain to you in just a moment what survival mode is, how it happens in the nervous system, but I just want you to get this first of all, how it's impacting your perception. So when you're in a survival state, essentially what happens is your brain at some point perceived a threat, okay? You have this very intelligent system. It's actually fascinating. The nervous system is so fascinating. It's so intelligently designed that perceived this threat and it went into fight or flight mode as a way of protecting you, okay? So this system in your body, it's trying to look out for you. The nervous system governs so many functions in your body. We'll get into that in a minute. But one of the main functions that it governs is your perception, okay? And since you perceived a threat and your body went into fight or flight mode, its only concern until you down-regulate out of fight or flight mode is to keep you on the guard and to keep you safe. So it's going to just keep your perception focused on threats, okay? So in the brain, you can see this, you will not be able to shift into a slower brainwave state when you're dysregulated. You will not be able to open up your perception. You will not be able to sink into the subconscious mind. You will not be able to perceive different possibilities. Your imagination will be shut down. Your visualization aspect of you will, in large part for most people, be shut down. And as well as that, your focus will essentially just narrow because you're in this constrictive, survival, fear-based state internally. Even if you don't feel afraid, I'm going to explain to you the symptoms in a minute. You might be able to identify if you are in this state. Most people are in this state. Your perception, let's say this is the quantum field of every possibility, right? Let's take a tangible example here. Let's say this is a person A and person B who lost their job. Let's say two people got laid off from the same position on the same day, okay? Person A is in a survival state. They're in survival mode. They're kind of reactive constantly. They're just in that fight or flight tense state. They got laid off from their job and their focus is narrowed only on the negative consequences of losing their job. They spiral into catastrophizing, into overthinking, into self-criticism, into doomsdaying, all of this stuff, worst case scenarioing. They're thinking, wow, I must be no good at anything. I'm never going to get a job again. What does this mean about me? They go into a shame spiral and they think about, well, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. And their brain immediately, because that's all that resonates with their state, is threats and danger, immediately goes to the most dangerous, most threatening possibility, okay? Not taking into account the infinite amount of other possibilities that could flow from this event or this thing that just happened, okay? So that is how you are interacting with things in your reality when you're in a survival state. You only see the worst case scenario. You only see the bad. You only see the negative. Why? Think about it like this. Okay, your nervous system is activated. It's trying to protect you and keep you safe. If you were in the wild trying to look out for your survival mode, right? You'd be looking out to see if there's any predators around you. You'd be looking out to see if there's any snakes or anything. You wouldn't be taking account of all the beautiful flowers and the scenery. No. You can't do that while you're in survival mode. Why? It's your body, your nervous system is trying to conserve your energy and get you to survive. Its only focus is survival, not thriving, just surviving. So it thinks it's keeping you safe by keeping your awareness on the worst possible case scenario and the dangers. The problem is, if you're this guy, let's say guy A is John. If you're John and you've lost your job and you're in survival mode, so naturally all you can think about is the worst case scenario, well, guess what? You are going to stay energetically resonant and vibrationally in alignment with worst case scenario. You will not be able to open up to all the potential good that could unfold from this event in your life. Ergo, you won't be able to manifest a much better outcome or a much better position. Let's take the example of Eric. Okay, Eric lost the job, but Eric is not in survival mode. Eric's nervous system is regulated. He has cultivated that sense of inner calm. And so his perspective, naturally, when you're not in survival mode, your perspective is much more expanded. It's much wider. You have like some space between you and the event. You can see a bigger picture. And so because Eric is in a regulated state, not a survival state, Eric's mind is not going to narrow his perception on only the threats in the worst case scenario. No, he's going to be able to take account of the bigger picture. So even though he might consider, God, maybe like, what does this mean about me that I lost my job? Maybe this could be a negative thing. He doesn't have to stay there because he can also see, maybe this could be the best thing that ever happened to me. How can I use this as a springboard? Maybe this is me being re-guided into something that's more aligned. You know what? Actually, I've been saying for 2 years that I want to leave this job and I want to go and do something else. Maybe this is my opportunity to do that. Maybe this is finally my chance to move to Bali or whatever, okay? Eric can perceive and imagine best case scenarios, good possibilities, because he's not in survival mode. And the opposite of survival mode is creative mode. You cannot be in creative mode whilst you are in survival mode. Those faculties, your imagination, your intuition, are offline while you're in survival mode. They're literally not there for you to utilize because your body thinks you are in the wild running from a bear. Why would it be like, yeah, okay, let's visualize your dream life? It's not going to do that. Before I rub this out, I just want you to remember, when you're in survival mode, when you're in fight or flight, when you're dysregulated, you are overlooking a whole field of information. You can't perceive it. And that is the information that you need to start perceiving if you want to start thriving and aligning with the best case scenarios in your life. So you can see how when you look after this one thing, which is coming out of survival mode and entering a more expansive creative mode, you open yourself up to exponential growth. Whereas when you stay stuck in survival mode, you stay stagnated in old thought loops, stuck in your old energy, repeating the same vibration, the same emotions, the same expectations from the past. You can't bring that with you if you want to create a whole new future. When you shift out of survival mode, when you shift your energy and your perspective opens up, you can connect to a better possibility. And that is where you start to quantum shift. That is where exponential growth becomes available to you. Like, even if I tangibly walk you through this, right? John says, oh my gosh, this means I'm no good, but this means I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. Oh, I'm panicking now. I'm never going to be able to find another job. So he might catastrophize for like 3 weeks. He might maybe go on a little bit of a boozer of a weekend. Maybe he's panicking. He's just stressing about it to anyone who will listen. He's in a spiral of negativity. And he's wasting all of this time worrying, constricting his focus, that he's so drained that he actually doesn't have the internal drive, resources, clarity, or perspective to take action that's going to help him. So he kind of just ends up in this downward spiral, and then he does end up in a difficult situation financially, and he ends up manifesting exactly the worst case scenario that he was thinking about. Whereas if we look at Eric, who I have half erased here, sorry Eric, because Eric was more proactive, yes, maybe he was down about it for a day or two, but because he was more regulated in his nervous system and he was able to come back to that baseline, he processed what was happening and he went, well, maybe this could open up to good. Because that thought produces a empowering emotion, an emotion that makes him feel like confident and positive, that emotion triggers him to take proactive steps. So he's like, you know what? Maybe this means I'm meant for more. Maybe this means I should put myself out there. And because he's thinking on that level and he's feeling on that level, his body starts taking action on that level. And so he remembers all of a sudden, because his perspective is open and he's vibrationally in alignment through his thoughts and emotions. He remembers all of a sudden, I had a call with a man 6 months ago and he told me about this really interesting opportunity. Let me give him a call. So Eric remembers this thing. He calls the guy. John might have had a conversation with someone 6 months ago as well, but John can't see that or remember that because his energy is not in alignment with it, right? Because he's in that survival state. But Eric can remember it because he's opened his perception. And so he calls the guy puts him in touch with someone else, sets up a job. Next thing you know, Eric is feeling amazing because he's suddenly got an amazing opportunity lined up for himself, right? And so you see how these two situations, the situation is the same, but the response is different because the person interpreting the situation is in a different state. That is what it always comes down to. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond. And most people are reacting impulsively on autopilot because they don't have the capacity to respond, because they are in a survival mode and everything feels like a threat. So they just feel like they're constantly reacting, they have no control over themselves. So that is what regulation will do for you. It gives you the power to open your awareness and respond in alignment with the outcome that you prefer. Which that is manifestation, that is reality creation. So if you're in survival...
Esse vídeo fez sentido para você? No próximo vídeo, vamos dar o próximo passo e entender melhor o que é esse modo de sobrevivência e como identificar se você está preso nele. Então já deixa o seu like e se inscreve no canal para não perder a parte 2. Até a próxima!